You know, that must have been dangerous when you went to SWAT in that kind of area.
Well, there are parts of my work that are dangerous. You know, in the after 9/11, when I went into Afghanistan, I was covering the war there. And so when I went getting into Afghanistan after the Taliban had left, it was scary. There's no such things as visas at that time because there was no new government. All we had was American soldiers. The Taliban had supposedly left. But, you know, there were mines that sort of littered the country, and there were a lot of warlords had set up these roads, their own security, and it was very iffy. But, you know, alhamdulillah, sometimes I just sort of leave it up to God, and I let my curiosity drive me, and wherever I think a story is, then I go and pursue it. There's been times where I've been in the border areas between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and again, you know, there's no security there, but I try to let my own I try to evaluate the situation, see how dangerous it is, and if it doesn't seem dangerous to me, then I go. And often what I find is because some of these places, you know, there's this appearance that they're dangerous, but when you get there, you find some of the most wonderful people in the world.
Wasn't that nice, yeah.
And they're so hospitable, and they take such good care of you. There's this one region in Afghanistan, close to the border with Pakistan, this mountainous area. I had heard that I'd heard from intelligence that this was an area that they believed that there might be some Al-Qaeda fighters that were still hung out in this area. And so I took my translator and my driver into this area. It took us an entire day to get in because there's no roads into these mountains. And the tires kept getting like flattened out, and so the driver would come out and he'd pump the air into the tires again. I have no idea how he fixed it, but he was fixing it. And so we finally arrived in this town where supposedly, you know, there were these Al-Qaeda fighters. And we talked to the chieftain of the town. He took us to his home, you know, he fed us. We stayed there overnight. He told me the story about how there actually weren't, you know, any Al-Qaeda there, that the U.S. intelligence believed that they were, and that actually they had attacked a caravan from that town that was going into Kabul because of this false intelligence that they had received. And the false intelligence that they had received was from a rival tribe.
Oh my
So a lot of times what I found out was that the intelligence that was being gathered by the U.S. was basically just rival tribes, like tattletaling on each other.
Yes.
And so in this case, well, luckily nobody was killed, but it was an entire caravan of cars and trucks that was, you know, they had been air-bombed. And, you know, I could still see the wreckage. I mean, there's just like shells of these trucks and these cars. And, you know, I was looking over them, and everybody was fine. But if you don't go into these areas, then you can't report these stories.
That's right.
The story that we were talking about earlier in SWAT, you know, if I hadn't gone in there, I wouldn't have been able to talk to people who had been victims of suicide bombing. And the story that I found out was so interesting. You know, this town, they're very conservative, they're Pashtun, and so there's this natural inclination to be more Islamic. And the Taliban that emerged in that town, or in that region of Pakistan, they sort of fed off of that. You know, they came in initially with the idea that they were going to make people better Muslims. And they set up this radio station, and this mullah became known as, what was his name, Mullah Radio, or FM Mullah, or something like that. And the reason was because he started this radio station on the FM dial on satellite, and people started listening to it. And initially it was all about praying and fasting and, you know, all those things that all Muslims are supposed to do. And then eventually it started becoming much more extreme, and he started talking about the need to fight the military. And at some point, you know, the Friday prayers that he was having in his mosque, you know, more people started coming. As people became more religious, more people started coming there. And at some point the congregation became like 10,000 people. And the militants that were in the area, the Al-Qaeda that were in the border area, Al-Qaeda militants, I don't know what to name them, these extremists that were in the area, heard that he was able to garner 10,000 people to a Friday prayer, realized, like, the committee that he had in control, they arrived into SWAT, and then they started training him and the people that were under him. And very soon these average, you know, they're human beings just like you and I, who initially just wanted to be religious, very soon they started finding that people within their town, if they didn't listen to these new sort of gunmen that had taken control.
These bullies kind of.
Yeah, these bullies that they were getting, there was beheadings that were happening.
Oh my
The police
word.
in the town were starting to get beheaded. Anybody that worked in government, which meant teachers, doctors, anybody, they were finding, you know, people with missing limbs, people dead, people were kidnapped, people went missing. And the beheadings were the things that were really, you know, just, I mean, it was just outrageous.
Atrocious, yeah.
It was the most atrocious. And so then they didn't want these people anymore because they, you know, they were killing them. And then the military came in, and once the military came in to root them out, then it became a battle between the militants and the military. The militants would fight with suicide bombings. Well, you know, 1 or 2 soldiers would die, but the rest would be civilians because these are always in public places.
Yes.
And so these people were caught in between, and they're the ones who are dying. But if you don't go into these places, you don't get to
You don't find these things out. Yeah, exactly, exactly. So this poor man who began the radio station with the best of intentions.
Well, I'm not even sure he's poor. I mean, he basically, it was him and his people that started, you know, they started terrorizing.
Oh, he joined, yeah. Okay, so he was then trained by them too.
Yeah.
So
At
he
some
went
point,
along with it.
He went along with it. You know, it was his people that started killing others and started doing the suicide bombings. But, you know, either he was influenced by the militants and the extremists that came in from the border areas.
Or maybe from the beginning they had put him up to it.
Who knows what?
Yeah,
who knows how
happened.
these operations, how you know what the links are
Yes.
and how they actually work. But at some point, this was how the community was swayed into accepting him. And then at some point they felt as this, you know, they're under siege by this.
Oh my goodness. Well, such interesting work. Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, that was
Is that
good.
good?
Very good. Very interesting. Yeah. Have one of these that's tamarind.
You know, what I need to ask you. So this guy at work was asking me where to get mint tea.
Oh, mint tea.
Where's the best mint tea in Chicago? Where do you get it?
Oh, okay. Well, it's the Persian store, I think.
That's what I told
Because-
him. Across from Reza's on
Yeah,
the park. Is that
yeah.
good?
Because they have this. I don't know if you wanted any of that tea I had.
That's interesting.
But it's this exact same thing, but with tea. It's this tea with it, but it has a green box and it's with mint. So, yeah, set that. You can get it online, but I'm sure they'll have it at yeah, Betty Garney store, yeah. And let me get you those,
Did you need anything else today? I thought maybe you needed like some organizational stuff.
no, I'm all set. We're all set. I sent everything off to my son, but he's so busy doing his, he had a lot of work till the 15th of December. So until then, he can't start working on the MuslimView.org.
Okay.
So we have the MuslimView.com. That's the
Right.
blog kind of thing.
Right, that's what you're
And I was able to update that, and now it's like in my control. So I put on there that the Indian Muslims refuse to bury the terrorists, which I thought was so good. That they're not going to.
Good. Thank you. Such a,
That they're not Muslim, that they've done that.
that's very good.
Yeah, and then the Pakistan divorce laws need to be changed. That was another one. Then under crisis, I found out these terrible things about throwing acid on women. It's happened in Sudan. It happened in India,
Pakistan and
Pakistan, Afghanistan, every place. And on YouTube, there were 4 or 5 videos that were just showing, you know, this horrible
You know,
thing.
at some point, I was telling my friend, I keep feeling like this destiny pull, sort of. That at some point I need to start some sort of organization. I think even maybe it's after the book, and I think it's after Hiba is in college, because I think it might be dangerous. But I think I need to be the person that brings sort of these religious leaders into vocally opposing, you know, any of this extremism.
Yeah.
Like make them not just say we condemn it.
That's right.
But say these people are not Muslim. These people are godless. Like that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And more sort of doing some of this stuff on the women's issues.
Yeah,
too.
exactly. Well, I have these.
Sorry. And that was good.